Yeah, we're live. So how has your week been? What's new?
Pretty productive so far. Plenty of work. We are scaling up to another network, so we are preparing ourselves, I would say. What about you?
It's been a fantastic week. Focused on the fundraise for Mempool Ventures, so heads down with the documentation, opening the bank accounts and stuff like that. But in terms of the introductions, and like connections to the family offices and other potential investors, it like I couldn't ask for better. And many people say fundraising is hard right now, but what is helping us for sure is our track record and the fact that we've done really well for and we did good for many people, and many friends have been actually asking us to set up the fund in the past. So it gives us a good pipeline of you know potential investors to the fund. So that's good, but really exhaustive. I'm feeling so exhausted, partially because like it's a work nonstop, like without the weekends. Like we've been sitting the entire previous weekend, like reading the drafts of the private placement memorandum and the LPA, like other documents that you know they take time. These are sometimes like 60, 90 pages of text that you have to go through and comment. But I can't complain. It's all the new knowledge and new experience, which you won't get in any MBA program. I keep saying life is the best MBA and your business is the best MBA program
Looks
in your
like
life.
even Web3 world still has the bureaucracy. Like it's still decentralized, but has a bureaucracy when you set up in legal things and legal entity.
Yeah, right. It would have been like so much easier if everything was regulated through just a smart contract, where in a way
Yeah.
you can't screw anything up, or can't screw anybody over because it's all managed by the algorithm and the code is law, and you'd be able to omit a lot of bureaucratic thresholds for sure. But anyhow, so this conversation of ours is about the blockchain security, and yeah, I would love to ask you about the everything that has happened so far in the space, and what you've seen in terms of the security. I don't know if Helen prepared any questions for us. I've not seen them. I'm very comfortable like going with the flow and just asking you away everything that really bugs me, and yeah, let's just get it
I
going.
would be happy to answer. Would be happy to answer the first question. And actually, let's dive deeper into the topic of how the bear market influenced the Web3 security, because we know that 2022 was quite harsh. It was, I believe, the start of the bear market, and we see plenty of projects are neglecting security because of the budget. We have plenty of bugs and hacks happened, right? So we'll see how 2023 will go. But I've recently, like around a month ago, I faced the reports over the year, and the reports were about the Web3 security in 2022. And the report says that 2022 is actually the worst year comparing to all the previous ones in terms of hacks. Like I pulled up the numbers, and it says that during the 2022, 3.8 billions funds were stolen. And comparing to 2021, it was just 3.3. It's not just, it's like a huge amount, but still, even 2022 is quite worse, 0.5 billion more than the previous year. And actually, I believe that's also the market is influencing, and the security aspects were influenced by the buy market. When it's all started, we see that the tendency goes that if the project is ready to be released, but they are not having enough funds for security, they still strive to release the MVP or go with the new updates, but most likely they won't audit it. The second fact that I faced, like if you're comparing the 2021 and 2022, the most hackable types of DeFi projects are still protocols. Protocols looks like the most sweetest target for the hackers. And protocols, like they are still under the targets in 2023. So we would recommend to make sure and to pay attention on the security aspects of protocols, because with the stats, around 70% of funds were stolen exactly from that places, especially if the protocol is multi chainable, like it goes over a couple of chains and it has bridges. And bridges looks like the most sweetest part. It looks like reasonable because if you're a hacker and if you plan to attack the smart contracts, you're finding the place where the tokens and the funds actually
Right.
um, yeah, stay. And if you're speaking about breach, one asset is locked, it stays on the smart contract, and it's transferred to another one, like by minting process, right? And it's like a sweet spot that you want to be that you want to actually to hack if you're an attacker. And it actually is the easiest part, I believe, to go to the breach if you want to get the huge buy. So the numbers are quite terrific, and the buy market dictates the condition. But still, like I wouldn't treat the bear market as just the the best case scenario for the whole blockchain. Like Web3 is striving to be more mature, and actually it's happening over the years that we see the tendency that bear markets go with the new updates, new projects, and the projects which are still alive, I would say, they are quite credible, and I believe they tend to get invested, right? Invested in.
Yeah, I can't
How
agree
does
with you more. The bear market is a special time frame for everybody who wants to keep building and operating to get ready for the new cycle, and incredible opportunity to slow down and make things properly. In regards to which, I would love to ask you more about like how to actually do the things properly. But before I do that, I do remember when I was still involved in security auditing myself, setting up the operations and growing the operations. It was back in 2020 or 21. No, it was 2020 when the hype was starting. And sometimes we were getting the clients that were like, most of the clients were, they were like superb, they were the top notch projects, and we loved working with them. But sometimes you will get the type of a project who just want to leverage the hype, and like being super opportunistic, they were skipping the security measures and basic considerations, to the extent that we had to fire them as the clients, because we didn't want to to even publish the reports associated with some of the projects, only keeping our name, or our partner's name attached to the best of the best, and making sure that every project that we audit is actually either good to go, or they have to get back to the drawing board and like redo their security. But so, can you enlighten us a little bit on like how to do the security properly, and like the key mistakes that you've seen with the projects that they could avoid in the future?
One of the biggest mistake that I've seen, that's when the project team says, we already done an audit. And if you're asking the project team, who's the auditor? Like who's that third party who audited your smart contracts? Their answer actually is quite straightforward, but quite weird at the same time. Like we haven't hired any third party auditor. We are doing an audit ourselves. And they explained that they internally conducted a smart contract audit or penetration test, and they thought that it was enough. But basically, that's not the proper case. Because if you're speaking about the in-house team, like if you're developing the code, you cannot audit the code. It's not the right and correct procedure. Like if you're writing, for example, your own text, you won't see all the bugs at the spot, right? You're passing this text to your fellow mates who will just check it. Okay, but what if you're passing it to the professionals? Like, for example, if you're making the parallels, just imagine that you're writing the essay or some term work, right? You're writing it, you're passing to your fellow mates who actually work together with you on it. But once you're passing it to some kind of the professor who are just checking your term work, you'll find plenty of suggestions and plenty of typos, plenty of mistakes. It's kind of thing when you're writing the smart contracts. When you're building the smart contracts and the project, you know the business logic, you know how it should operate, and you know it's just a simple human error that if you're working much on the same activity, on the same thing, you're more tend to skip this or that mistake. It's not saying that you're a bad developer. Like we are all human beings. Every single person can make the mistake, but it's more complicated for you and for the internal team to find and to spot the issue. That's the first point why I see that internal audit won't happen, like won't help and won't be the most secure, I would say, procedure for the project. And the second point is that if you're making the internal audit, is not accredited because if you're making it internally, most likely you're not making it in the right procedure. Penetration test is quite a complicated thing, and you need to follow the best practices and procedures in order to make it happen properly. The smart contract audit is kind of same. So when you're passing it to the professionals who already conducted more than a couple of hundreds audits, anyways, they will be more in-depth analysis, right? And they will find more drawbacks of the smart contract, maybe vulnerability or operational misbehavior. And speaking about the cycles, like how to do it properly, when to understand when you need to do an audit and when is the best time to do an audit. So if you're making the smart contract, once you are developing them, right, you have the first thing is actually to develop the smart contract. That's the step one. Once you develop it, please make sure that you test it. Like I face the points when some of the projects that came to us, they haven't written their own tests. Like it was mind blowing for me because the developing community, I believe, like they're all aware of tests and how important this is as the part of the development lifecycle. But sometimes, like I cannot get the reason. Maybe it was just the harsh timeline and they were out of time. Maybe it was something else, but the tests were not written, and that's definitely not the case you want to follow, right? So the first step, as I mentioned, you're developing. The second step, you need to test. And that's how you secure the smart contracts internally. And then once you have the complete code base, which is already set and is untouchable, like you're not planning any changes, that's the exact time when you need to pass this code base to the third party auditor. The auditor will do the smart contract audit or they will do the penetration testing. It depends on the type of the project and it depends on the type of the code base. So once these actions of the third-party auditor will happen, like we will revert back to you the list of issues that you are fixing, right? And once you are ready with the new commit, we are rechecking it once again. So from the auditor's point of view, we may state that everything is actually secure and you are ready for the MVP. But here's one more point to add. The procedure I recently disclosed, that's basically how the 90% of all projects on the market will do. Like once you get the report, once the auditor says everything is fine and secure, you have the green light to release. They will release. But we have one more step, which we highly recommend to do. And this is the step about bug bounty programs. That's the fourth step of the life cycle that you need to follow. Because once you're having the report, even if you're having two auditors, you still need to do the bug bounty program if you want to be 100% sure that the project is up to date, completely operational, and completely secure. That's like four main steps you need to follow. I can revise them once again. So that's the developing itself as the first step. Then goes to internal team. The second is testing that you are doing internally with the help of in-house team. Then you're going to the auditing step, which should not be in-house. Like you can test in-house, but not audit. And this is done by a third-party auditor. And as the fourth step, which we highly recommend, is the bug bounty program that you need to enroll and basically secure smart contracts as the last step before the release of the MVP, especially if you're the protocol project or have plenty of smart contracts which are cross-related, or if you have governance system. Also, bridges are quite vulnerable, so think twice before you're making the release if you need to go over all security cycles or just neglect one of them in the favor of the timeline.
Yeah. So there is a question from a listener of ours. They are asking, while auditing any smart contract, what are the regulations that you use while reviewing the draft? Or maybe it also means any procedures or rules, and how different are they from other auditors, like Hacken, for example?
Well, speaking about the industry as such, there are recommendations, there are standards, but there is no like set recommendation on which to follow on this or that project if you're speaking about penetration tests. Because like on the penetration test, for example, once we're making one step, we are planning a couple of next steps. But in the result and the outcome of the couple of next steps, we are planning the second block, the second cluster of steps. That's how we conduct penetration tests. Speaking about smart contract audit, we have the procedure, and the procedure was initially it was slightly different that we are doing right now. Like we enhanced our procedure and make it different due to the security reasons. Like we had the idea on how to implement it better and how to actually, um, enforce even better security points. So how we are different in the workflow from Hacken and some of the auditors on the market. Like the first couple of parts are quite standard. So let me guide you through all the steps and work through the workflow as such to answer this question. It will be in more depth and basically in more details. So the first step with the smart contract audit, you're making the research. That's the
By the
vital
way, do you
part.
have any visual for that as well that you can screen share?
Well, let me check. Mhm. I haven't prepared the visuals as such before this live stream, but anyways, I can present the one pager of Vidma, or I can present the website. It also has the details.
Sure.
Give me a second, I'll open the.
Do you have the option to use to choose the other layouts here in the studio, or otherwise I can do it? Uh, yeah. Can you share the screen?
I believe so. I believe so. I'm
Okay.
pulling up the document before I'll share. Ian, how do you feel about the security market these days? It's also the question from me, which I was interested in while I'm pulling up the document on the screen.
Me,
Yeah.
I think it's kind of getting better. I've seen a couple of the investments in the tools that help with the security of the smart contracts and the infrastructures in the Web3. So I do envision a lot of changes in terms of like productization of the security space. That's why if Vidma ever comes with the ideas of the product, you should send it to me for Mempool Ventures review, and we may fund some of them.
By the way, I'm able to share screen, looks like. So here we
You
go.
are? Yeah.
Yeah. Can you see my screen now?
Hold on a sec. I'll add it to the stream. Yes, it's on the stream now.
Okay, okay. So this is the slide from our pitch deck that describes the workflow of the audit. As I mentioned, the first initial step is the research phase. So why the research phase is mandatory. We are checking the smart contracts to find three moments, three piles. So the first one is security vulnerabilities and issues. The second one is operational mistakes of the smart contracts, and the third one is optimizational errors. So we always advise on how to optimize the smart contract. So in order to get the vision like how your contract should operate, we also dive deeper into your project documentation. Let it be the white paper, let it be some kind of the conceptual docs about the business logic and also about the tech logic, architecture docs. Like if anything that you okay, describing the business
Sorry, your
logic.
microphone got a little bit muffled.
Is it better now? Can you hear me?
It's kind of worse. It's muffled a little bit.
What if I mute screen audio? Is it better?
Please try.
Okay. So we are starting with the research phase. And after the research, like once we conduct this step, we are moving to the first execution step of the smart contract auditing workflow. And this step is quite common in the industry. Like all auditors, which are professionals in this, they do the manual parts. So it means they are checking the smart contracts line by line, step by step, in order to get the idea of the vulnerabilities which are hidden. So basically, they are checking the functional lines in order to spot any security vulnerability or operational misbehavior of the smart contract. When we are done with the manual check of all the code base, all the scope that we are having, we are going to static analysis tools. We are using static analysis tools in order to finalize the manual part and to dive even deeper into the code base. And once all this is conducted, you will have the first preliminary report. After this step, like once the report is sent to you, we are not done with the audit. We are moving towards the second step of the execution and actually the third step of the whole workflow. This is called testing part. And here is like why we're having the difference. Uh, we added testing parts like around a year ago to our workflow because we find tests quite reasonable step in the auditing workflow. You may ask like why? Because plenty of developers are writing their test suite on their own, right? And it won't make any sense. Like maybe somebody thinks like that. But for us, tests are a must, and I will explain why. If you're writing your own test suite, it's fine, but we still need to write our own test suite on our side. Because as an auditor, we need to figure out if the contract behaves properly or wrongly in this or that scenario. And testing part is the best way to see how the contract will operate when we are writing the test like A or test B. And this part actually gives a great amount of operational mistakes in
Yeah,
smart
the testing
contracts,
is totally separate from the testing that the internal team of the project has
for
done.
sure,
So,
for sure.
so
Like
I
once
take
you're
this. Yeah, this is the cornerstone of the auditing because the teams that have written the code are usually biased. For some of the larger protocols that we've been incubating in the past, what we've been also doing as the extra step before we were giving the projects for the external audit was we were deploying the separate internal auditing team or the QA team to write the second test suite on top of the tests that the developers were writing on their own. So we had the two test suites internally, and only after did we send it for the external audit by a company like Vidma, and then Vidma would do their testing to make sure that everything complies per your vision or your understanding of the business requirements and business logic as you've received it from the client. So yeah.
And it's also important to mention that at least 95% of all functional lines need to be tested in order to get the testing done. Like if you're developing the project, just make sure that all functions will be tested. Because sometimes like 20% of coverage we still face it, but it's not the good case. So the coverage should be as high as possible for the code base. And answering like the second difference is on the market, each auditor has its own rules on workflow. But speaking about Vidma, I can speak for ourselves and how we do the security points of our workflow. We have two auditors in one scope. Like why we always have the two auditors, because it's a double check of finding, is a double check of the code base. And also it's always better to have a spare eyes on the code base when just you're having one auditor, which is still a human, right? And human error risk is still valid. So if you're having a couple of, it's always better and always the process goes smoother. So we have always the auditors in one scope. Even if you're passing to us the smart contract audit, like smart contract, like a token, for example, right? In our audit, we still have two two auditors in one scope. So this is
Cool.
the second point. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Look, I think we have kind of up to 5 minutes left. But I think it's worth sharing a little bit like what Vidma is and what you guys do, and what projects are a good fit for Vidma to be audited.
Let's start with the last question, like which products are a good fit to be audited. We do not have the specific requirements for the project as such. We just need to get your code base and to make sure that you're safe. That's our mission, like so that you can sleep well and don't bother with the hacks. So
But will
if
you
you're
work
related
with
to,
Solidity-based projects, or like are you spend across other
we
layer one solutions as well?
we started back like when we founded Vidma, we started with Solidity only projects, but then we scaled up to Rust language as well. So as of now, we're covering all EVM based chains, let it be Polygon, Avalanche, Ethereum, so on and so forth. And we also can audit any chains which are Rust related. So Cosmos can be audited by us, Neo Protocol. We can audit also other chains which are related to Rust language. So this is two main priorities, but we are also scaling up to a couple of new ones these days. So that's why, like I was mentioning, that is quite productive in the office, and we are, changing the operations and basing new workflows for the other chains as well these days, like these 2 weeks. Speaking about the project time, like when is the best time to get a security audit? I believe when you're completing the code base. That's the exact time because we having such cases when the code base is nearly complete and the projects are asking us about the smart contract audit. But then after our audit is conducted and completed, they'll make a couple of changes. And everything should be rechecked and retested once again. So each year following change in the code base, like each following edit in the code base, may still cause some errors. So that's why like we always strive to have the audit when your commit is final, when your code base is final, and when you have no further changes planned. That's the exact time when you need the smart contract audit. But still, like that's how all the auditing industry work. It's focusing on the ready pieces of functionality. If you're having the long process and if you're having the development which is planned for a couple of months to a couple of years, you still can have the security services and you're still able to find the issues right on the spot. Because last summer, it was in August, I believe mid-August 2022, we launched one more service called ongoing code review. And this service is quite different from the smart contract audit in terms that smart contract audit is aimed for the ready piece of functionality, as I mentioned, but ongoing code review on the second hand is focusing on the ongoing development process. So it means we are checking commit after commit, and we are helping you to find issues right on the spot when you make them. So no need to wait a couple of months when you'll get the audit and we'll have a huge list of findings. Like the biggest list of findings for one scope that we had was around 58 issues, if I'm mistaken. Like we had one audit and it was a nightmare for the project team to fix everything because if you're having the set release date and it will be like 1 week after the audit, just imagine that you need to fix 58 issues and you still need a couple of days to be passed in order to see if the issues and fixes are actually result and correct. So it's a huge risk. With the ongoing code review, you are
Right.
minimizing that risk.
Cool. Lovely. Well, all right. I would like to thank you for the participation today. I think I'm going to do the Friday live streams or even more often streams in the future. What a nice way to share the knowledge with the community. So thanks for coming. And before we set off, what is your plan for the weekend? Anything funny?
Well, I'll try to at least have 1 day off because, as I mentioned, we have plenty of preparational activities. So looks like Saturday will be still with my laptop, but maybe on Sunday I will just jump off the city to some more quiet location, I would say.
Nice.
Some, yeah. Ian, thanks for having me. Thanks for hosting me on this live stream. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Cheers now and talk to you soon. Thanks for
Likewise.
watching, everybody. Bye.
Bye bye.